At number 10 is a pandemic. Luke Kemp, a research associate at the Center for the Existential Risk at the University of Cambridge, says the end of humanity is far more likely to be brought about by multiple factors, a pileup of disasters. But one of those huge disasters could be another pandemic. Though apocalyptic movies often turn to viruses, bacteria, and fungi to wipe out huge swaths of the population, a pandemic alone is unlikely to drive humanity to extinction simply because the immune system is a broad and effective defense, says Amish Adalja, an infectious disease physician at the Johns Hopkins Center for Health Security. A pandemic could be devastating and lead to severe and upheaval. The Black Death killed 30 to 50% of the population of Europe, but it is unlikely that a pathogen would kill all of humanity, Amish says. Yes, an infectious disease could kill a lot of people, he says, but then you're gonna have a group of people that are resilient to it and survive. Humans also have the tools to fight back against a pathogen, from medical treatments to vaccines to social distancing measures that became familiar worldwide during the COVID pandemic, Alja says. Now, if infectious disease contributes to the downfall of humanity, it's likely to be just one piece of a larger puzzle, but my god, I don't want to go through another pandemic again. Number 9. Issues with the Large Hadron Collider. Scientists use the Large Hadron Collider (LHC) in Switzerland to set up controlled collisions of particles at very high speeds. Now, most astronomers believe that dark matter accounts for 85% of all mass in the universe, and that its existence would explain the apparent extra gravity detectable around galaxies and within huge galaxy clusters. However, so far no one has been able to identify what dark matter is made of. Until recently, the front-runner suspect had been a breed of particle called WIMP, which is an acronym for Weakly Interacting Massive Particles. These theoretical particles are thought to barely interact with normal matter, except when it comes to gravity. However, the LHC, the world's largest and most powerful particle accelerator, has failed to turn up evidence for the existence of WIMPs. But if they do find them though, what does it mean? Now, these experiments have caused some to believe that energy set free by the collisions will form a black hole powerful enough to consume Earth and life on it. Now, no such black hole has been cited yet, and several high-profile studies have concluded that no such dangers are associated with the experiments conducted at the LHC, but who knows what could happen in the future. Number 8. Turn off the computer. You've heard the theory that we all live in a simulation, right? The simulation theory, first proposed in 2001 by Oxford philosopher Nick Bostrom, has recently spread across the app TikTok after TikToker Heidi Wong posted a video that introduced the hypothesis and argued that we're more likely to live in a simulation than reality, citing recent advances in video game graphics as evidence. Out of all these simulations, there's only one base reality, so statistically we're more likely to be in a simulation, Wong argued. Basically, we are living inside a video game, said TikToker Nikki Jane. Honestly, this does make sense if you think about how realistic video games are getting day by day, and all the little glitches you see in the world are so unexplainable, and it would make sense behind this theory. So, do we live in a simulation? What if one day the creator decides, I've had enough, and shuts down the computer? Then we would cease to exist. Moving on to the Helena slump. A great danger is posed by the possible collapse of the southern portion of Kilauea volcano on the Big Island of Hawaii. The south slope is geologically unstable. Called the Helena slump, this could drop 12,000 cubic kilometers of rock into the Pacific Ocean, generating a mega tsunami that would go around the Pacific Ocean and reach the western seaboard of North America in a matter of hours, overpowering coastal communities. There is evidence that a similar collapse of the nearby Mauna Loa around 12,000 years ago generated a tsunami with a run-up height of over 400 meters. Now, even as recently as 1975, movement of the Helena slump generated a smaller yet destructive tsunami that reached California. Given that the slump is continually active and moving, it might only take a jolt from an earthquake in the tectonically active state to set in motion this catastrophic chain of events. Now, the scary thing is that we can't do anything to stop it, and this threat will be looming over us. Now let's discuss gamma ray bursts. Gamma rays are the most dangerous forms of radiation. Gamma ray bursts likely result from the merging of two dying stars and can travel through almost anything, so that is not good for us humans. The event generates powerful beams of energy, firing charged particles into space in a spectacular surge of light. Now, if Earth were to be in the path of a gamma ray burst, radiation would destroy our atmosphere and produce nitrogen oxides, a gas that would eradicate the ozone layer. Without the ozone layer, the sun's ultraviolet rays would reach the surface unimpeded, wiping out the plankton in the ocean that produces oxygen to the atmosphere and disrupting the food chain, while causing other serious effects such as skin cancer. Presently, mechanisms for this generation of gamma ray burst emissions are not fully understood, so we just have to hope that one strong enough doesn't wipe us out. Now we have the San Andreas Fault. The San Andreas Fault is a continental right lateral strike slip transform fault that extends roughly 750 miles through the Californias. It forms the tectonic boundary between the Pacific Plate and the North American Plate. Now, a study found that the risk of a large earthquake here may be increasing more rapidly than scientists had previously believed. The risk is currently concentrated on the southern section of the fault, aka the region around Los Angeles, because strong earthquakes have occurred relatively recently on the central 1857 and northern 1906 segments of the fault, while the southern section has not seen any similar rupture for at least 300 years. Now, if or when it ruptures, it would be strongly felt and potentially cause significant damage throughout much of Southern California. All the data suggests that the fault is ready for the next big earthquake, but exactly when the triggering will happen and when the earthquake will occur is unknown, which is one of the scariest parts. Now we have the North Sea tsunami. The North Sea may seem an unlikely place for a devastating tsunami, but climate change has led to concern that a submarine landslide in the region might lead to just this. Scientists have suggested that over 6,000 years ago, a sharp sea level rise attributed to a changing climate and the rapid melting of ice, and it added weight to the submarine glacial deposits at the edge of the Norwegian continental shelf, destabilizing them and causing a 300-kilometer long landslide. This generated a tsunami that reached heights of up to 20 meters in the Shetland Islands, 10 in the Norwegian coast, and 6 meters off the northern and western coast of Scotland. Now, should Earth experience such rapidly warming climate again, and experience the associated melting of the Greenland and/or West Antarctic ice sheets, a similar event might as well be possible, which today would affect the coastal populations of Scotland and Norway and perhaps even London. Onto the Cascaden Big One. At the bottom of the Pacific Ocean, just off the west coast of North America, and running from Northern California to Vancouver Island, is a subduction zone, a place where the Pacific Ocean floor is being forced beneath the North American landmass. Now, the rate of movement of the ocean floor here is currently just 40 millimeters a year, but the upper part of the system is currently stuck, meaning that the North American plate is being compressed. At some point, the pressure being built up has to be released, and this will be in the form of a massive earthquake, perhaps up to a magnitude of 9. This could cause a collapse of the coastal region of up to 2 meters and a possible horizontal displacement of 30 meters. Now, shortly after the intense shaking subsides, the coastal community will be struck by a tsunami that can make the 2011 Japanese wave look small. Around 7 million people live in this region, from Vancouver through Seattle to Tacoma and Portland. Scientists have calculated that in the last 10,000 years, the region has suffered 41 large earthquakes, occurring with an average interval of 244 years, and the last was a magnitude 9, and that was 315 years ago, so this could happen at any time. Next up is that an asteroid hits Earth. On February 15, 2013, a fireball streaked across the sky over Russia and exploded in a window-shattering airburst. Now, it was nearly a disaster, as a ground strike may have ended the lives of tens of thousands of people. Hours after the event, a space rock 3 times larger threaded the space between Earth and its artificial satellites. Now, had this asteroid struck a densely populated location like New York, it would have destroyed Midtown instantly, blasted down surrounding skyscrapers, and rained firestorm-spawning meteors for hours. Now, short-term death tolls might have reached the millions. Now, of course, water covers 71% of Earth, and many large inland regions remain sparsely populated. Thus, in the rare case such a massive rock actually hit Earth, it would stand a small chance of striking a population center. But a nation wrecker or even a planet killer could come knocking someday, perhaps sooner than we'd like to think. Now we have a megathrust earthquake. On April 1st, 2014, a magnitude 8.2 earthquake occurred 97 kilometers off the northwest coast of Chile, causing landslides and a tsunami to hit the coast. This earthquake created the possibility for an even larger earthquake for Chile in the near future due to the location of the earthquake. Now, the earthquake originated from the subduction zone, where one tectonic plate, the Nazca Plate, is plunging underneath another, the South American Plate. This subduction zone lies within the Ring of Fire, an arc in the Pacific containing 75% of the world's active volcanoes, which causes many of the world's seismic activity. When a tectonic plate moves under another, faults can come under severe amounts of stress, and any release of tension causes seismic activity, namely earthquakes. Now, the April 2014 earthquake was a megathrust earthquake, or a major earthquake caused by the release of tension from a subduction zone. Now, it only relieved 33% of the tension on the faults, leaving the rest to be relieved in the near future. And last on our list is black holes. Our galaxy is full of black holes, dozens of miles wide. Their gravity is so strong they swallow everything. Now, based on such observations and even more theoretical arguments, researchers guesstimate there are about 10 million black holes in the Milky Way. Now, if a normal star were moving towards us, we'd know it, but with a black hole, there is little warning. Assuming that black holes are randomly distributed throughout the galaxy and that there really are a few hundred million of them present, this likely means that the closest black hole to Earth is only around 40 to 80 light years away. Now, if a black hole contacts the Earth, of course it will swallow us. But we don't need to be swallowed in order to suffer catastrophic consequences. If a black hole simply passes very close by the Earth, it would cause what's known as a tidal disruption event, an event where the black hole's gravitational influence on the closer side of the Earth is so much stronger than the farther side of the Earth that it actually begins ripping our planet apart. Similarly, the top side of Earth would be pulled down relative to the center, while the bottom side gets pulled upward. What I'm pretty much saying is the gravitational and atomic bonds holding Earth together could be shattered, transforming our planet from a solid sphere into a thin, stretched debris stream that looks like a piece of spaghetti. Now, in fact, astronomers have named this exact process spaghettification because of the stretching effects that black holes have. Coming in at number 10 is catastrophic climate change. The world could see another record-breaking warm year in 2024 as global temperatures are on the path to continue rising due to increases in emissions. The 2023 UN Climate Change Summit ended last week in Dubai, with a deal calling on countries to transition away from fossil fuels, but could without any agreement on a phase-out. That was despite the world living through its hottest year on record, with increasing emissions from fossil fuels playing a critical role in rising global temperatures. This year has been extraordinary. We had the warmest July on record, which was also the warmest month. Every single month since then, August, September, October, November, have been record-breaking months for that time of year. This is just unprecedented. Carla Buon-Temple, director of the Copernicus Climate Change Service at European Center for Medium-Range Weather Forecasts, said. Not to mention all the natural disasters that have been happening more frequently. Earthquakes, flooding, and tsunamis are all things we'll see more next year. Number 9. Nuclear war. The threat of a nuclear war has been looming over our heads for years. The good news here is that the nuclear war could only end humanity under very special circumstances. Limited exchanges like the US's bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki in World War II would be humanitarian catastrophes but couldn't render humans extinct. But why does nuclear war make the list? Well, because of the possibility of nuclear winter. That is, if enough nukes are detonated, world temperatures would fall dramatically and quickly, disrupting food production and possibly rendering human life impossible. Now, it's unclear if that's even possible or how big of a war you would need to trigger it, but if it is a possibility, that means a massive nuclear exchange is a possible cause of human extinction. According to CNBC, China is rapidly expanding their nuclear arsenal and could have 1,000 nuclear warheads by 2030, part of Beijing's ambitious military buildup. Now, as of 2021, humanity has 13,410 nuclear weapons, so it is very possible. Number 8. Ecological catastrophe. Ecological collapse refers to a situation where an ecosystem suffers a drastic, possibly permanent reduction in carrying capacity for all organisms, often resulting in mass extinction, a report explains. Mass extinctions can happen for a number of reasons, many of which have their own categories on this list: the climate change, change, an asteroid impact, etc. The journalist Elizabeth Kolbert has argued that humans may be in the process of causing a mass extinction event, not least due to carbon emissions. At least 30,000 species vanish every year from human activity, which means we are living in the midst of one of the greatest mass extinctions in Earth's history. Given that humans are heavily dependent on ecosystems, both natural and artificial, for food and other resources, mass extinctions that disrupt those ecosystems threaten us as well. Number 7. Mass insanity. While physical health has improved in most parts of the world over the past century, mental health is getting worse. The World Health Organization estimates that 500 million people around the world suffer from a psychological disorder. Gregory Stock, a biophysicist at the University of California in Los Angeles, believes medical science will soon allow people to live to be 200 years or older. If such an extended lifespan becomes common, it will pose unfathomable social and psychological challenges. Increasing human lifespans may actually intensify the problem because people have more years to experience the loneliness and infirmity of old age. Now, Americans over 65 are already disproportionately likely to end their own life, and perhaps 200 years of life will overload the human brain, leading to a new kind of insanity we haven't seen before. Number 6. Collapse of the vacuum. In the book Cat's Cradle, Kurt Vonnegut popularized the idea of Ice 9, a form of water that is far more stable than the ordinary kind, so it is solid at room temperature. Unleash a bit of it and suddenly all water on Earth transforms to Ice 9 and freezes solid. Ice 9 was a satirical invention, but an abrupt, disastrous phase transition is a possibility. Very early in the history of the universe, according to a leading cosmological model, empty space was full of energy. This state of affairs, called a false vacuum, was highly precarious. A new, more stable kind of vacuum appeared, and like Ice 9, it quickly took over. This transition unleashed a tremendous amount of energy and caused a brief runaway expansion of the cosmos. It is possible that another, even more stable kind of vacuum exists, however. As the universe expands and cools, tiny bubbles of this new kind of vacuum might appear and spread at nearly the speed of light. The laws of physics would change in their wake, and a blast of energy would dash everything to bits. Number 5. Environmental toxins. From all over the world, modern history is filled with frightening examples of the dangers of industrial pollutants. But the poisoning continues. In major cities around the world, the air is thick with diesel particulates, which the National Institutes of Health now considers as something that may increase your risk of cancer. Heavy metals from industrial smokestacks circle the globe, even settling in the snows of Antarctica. Intensive use of pesticides in farming guarantees runoff into rivers and lakes, and in high doses, dioxins can disrupt fetal development and impair reproductive function. And dioxins are everywhere. Every year, NIH adds to its list of cancer-causing substances, and the number is up to 218. So just be cautious of what you're breathing in. Number 4. Solar geoengineering. There's a dramatic option for stopping or even reversing rising global temperatures, but it becomes with a significant possible risk. Solar geoengineering would reflect light and heat away from Earth and back into space by injecting aerosols into the stratosphere, the second layer of Earth's atmosphere. Now, for now, it only exists in computer models, but the first experiment is being planned by Harvard researchers. Solar geoengineering is one of the two emerging technologies that could manipulate the atmosphere and reduce climate risk. Now, the other is directly removing carbon dioxide from the atmosphere, which doesn't currently exist on a big enough scale. If solar geoengineering were deployed, it would affect the entire atmosphere and be humanity's largest ever global endeavor. While it is the only known technique that could stop rising temperatures, there's still a lot we don't know, including whether it could destabilize local and global climate or ecosystems. Manipulation on this scale without understanding the effects could turn out to be catastrophic for the human race, and I didn't even know that this was a possibility, but I think we should not mess with the sun. Number 3. Biological and chemical warfare. Unlike nuclear weapons, which require complex engineering, biological and chemical warfare can be developed at a relatively low cost and with relatively attainable materials. The Syrian government has used chemical weapons in the civil war that has ravaged the country. These chemical attacks using sarin and chlorine have appalled the international community and underscored the damage chemical weapons can do. Weaponized toxic materials could do tremendous harm to the localized target, say if the toxins were released into the air or into the water supply. Biological weapons represent a greater catastrophic threat, as advances in synthetic biology have made very real the possibility of malicious people creating harmful pathogens for weaponization, or innocent researchers accidentally releasing a lethal infectious bug into the world. Number 2. The Big Rip. In physical cosmology, the Big Rip is a hypothetical cosmological model concerning the ultimate fate of the universe, in which the matter of the universe, from stars and galaxies to atoms and subatomic particles, and even space-time itself, is progressively torn apart by the expansion of the universe at a certain time in the future, until distances between particles will infinitely increase. According to the standard model of cosmology, the scale factor of the universe is accelerating, and in the future era of cosmological constant dominance will increase exponentially. The truth of the hypothesis relies on the type of dark energy present in our universe. The type that could prove this hypothesis is a constantly increasing form of dark energy known as phantom energy. If the dark energy in the universe increases without limit, it could overcome all forces that hold the universe together, and that is just terrifying. And coming at number 1 is zombies. Listen, there's no proof that a zombie apocalypse could be on the horizon, but anything can happen in this crazy world. Some illnesses mirror the traits of zombies, such as rabies and leprosy, which could mean we may end up having a zombie variant on our hands. Scientists have researched whether there is a virus that could cause an apocalypse, but none have had a breakthrough. You would need a highly transmissible disease that causes specific effects inside the brain, destroying inhibitions and higher thought, increased aggression, and huge bursts of adrenaline, among other things. Now, it would have to turn thinking humans into ultra-aggressive, instinctual animals. Bites and body fluids couldn't be the only means of infection, as the disease would have to be waterborne and semi-airborne near concentrations of infection from their breathing. Something that only transmits through direct contact would never spread fast enough to cause some kind of apocalypse scenario, but like I said, anything could happen.
Internet censorship. Anonymous has a bone to pick with censorship, and just recently, Canada has passed this Online Streaming Act in 2022, a law which could effectively be used to control what we see online. Which doesn't sound like a doomsday scenario at first glance, but just wait till I get into it. See, the thing is, this act talks about removing internet content considered harmful, such as misleading political communications and propaganda. But what qualifies as propaganda, and who gets to make that call? Anonymous is concerned that this vagueness will give the government too much power to decide what's okay for us to see. It's easy to envision a scenario where this act can be leveraged by the government in power to silence and suppress political opposition or present a curated worldview to its citizens. A dystopian notion, to be sure. This is a big deal because the fact that they could use this to shadow ban voices they don't like or control what narratives we're exposed to will surely lead to a breakdown of democracy. Anonymous is known for targeting organizations and governments they perceive as restricting online freedom, so it's only a matter of time before they start firing back with a little something called cyber warfare.
The year 2022 was a big one for them, considering they managed to hack into different governments across the world, including Australia, where they leaked 82 gigabytes worth of emails that exposed the police protesting the detention of refugees. In Australia, they have a law in place where they can detain someone who isn't a citizen if suspected of violating the terms of their visa or not having a valid visa. So for them to be ignoring the mass amounts of emails is more than concerning for people trying to enter the country. But that's not all. They also hacked the Russian government as retaliation for their invasion of Ukraine. They blasted Ukrainian culture like flags, symbols, shows, and other parts of the culture across broadcast TV shows and radio stations. So not only did they have a hand in predicting how much is really controlled by the government, but they also exposed how far the government is willing to go in order to keep their plans from being exposed.
If you're enjoying the video so far, you could support the channel by pressing like, subscribing to Most Amazing, and ringing that notification bell. Next up, we have cyber warfare. Anonymous is gearing up to cause some serious trouble this year through cyber warfare in an attempt to cause a government shutdown and collapse of the nation as we know it. But how will they go about this, you ask? Well, there are a number of different routes they could take. In the past, they've leveraged the gaps in cybersecurity, obtaining all kinds of personal information on government employees, like their names, addresses, phone numbers, social insurance numbers, heck, even credit card details, leaking it all to the public, with some even going as far as using those details to make vast donations to different charities. But this is definitely the easiest and least damaging thing they could do. The hacker group is so effective that even the president considers Anonymous a potential threat to national security, as they've got the capability to disable entire parts of the US power grid. Imagine your whole government, nay, your whole country, suddenly hitting the rewind button on technological advancement. No lights, no Wi-Fi, no TV, nada. That's just the start. Everything that relies on power starts working, just like your fridge, your toast, no more cold milk or ice cream. Computers are as dead as a doornail. Your phone, well, unless it's charged up, it's just a fancy paperweight now. Businesses shut down, hospitals struggle, and transportation grinds to a halt. No heating or cooling systems, no running water if you're on a well pump. It's like taking a step back into time when life was way less convenient. Then people start worrying about food going bad, staying warm. Heck, some might even get anxious about security because without power, security systems are going to be down and first responders are going to be hard to reach unless you're planning on sending a freaking messenger pigeon. So yeah, doomsday coming up.
Number 7. Major asteroid impact. Major asteroid impact has caused large-scale extinction on the Earth in the past. Most famously, the Chicxulub impact 66 million years ago is widely believed to have caused the mass extinction that wiped out the dinosaurs. Theoretically, a future impact could have a similar effect. Now the good news is that NASA is fairly confident in its ability to track asteroids large enough to seriously disrupt human life upon impact, and detection efforts are improving. NASA's Double Asteroid Redirection Test DART robotic spacecraft was launched into space in November 2021 on a sole mission to slam into the small asteroid Dimorphos at 4.1 miles per second to change the asteroid's orbit just slightly, and it was a smashing success. DART crashed into its target on September 26, 2022, but not only that, after weeks of data analysis, NASA confirmed the impact successfully altered Dimorphos' orbit. It was the first time in history humans purposely changed the motion of a celestial object. So if this did become a major problem, we could possibly fix it, and for an asteroid to wipe out almost everything on Earth, it would have to be massive. Scientists estimate it would take an asteroid about 7 to 8 miles wide crashing into the Earth. Once it made impact, it would create a tremendous dust plume that would envelope the entire planet, block out the sun, and raise temperatures where the asteroid made impact. Billions would die, and much of life on the planet would be destroyed, but scientists believe some would survive. NASA scientists say it would take an asteroid 60 miles wide to totally wipe out Earth. But will that happen sometime soon? Who knows? Number 6. The Super Volcano. As with asteroids, there's historical precedent for volcanic eruptions causing mass extinction. The Permian-Triassic extinction event, which rendered something like 90% of the Earth's species extinct, is believed to have been caused by an eruption. Eruptions can cause significant global cooling and can disrupt agricultural production. They're also basically impossible to prevent, at least today, though they are extremely rare. Now the question about supervolcanoes, it turns out, isn't whether one could destroy all life on Earth, it's when it will do it again. Around 200 million years ago, a supervolcano erupted with such insistent energy that 75% of the species on the planet were eradicated. It was so gigantic that it pulled apart North America and Africa and created the Atlantic Ocean in between. For 600,000 years, the supervolcano called Camp, Central Atlantic Magmatic Province, erupted over and over. That's why people are so scared about the Yellowstone volcano. Number 5. Extraterrestrial invasion. Nostradamus said that in 2024, the Earth would face a catastrophic event while an advanced alien race would invade our planet. Mankind will have to face an alien menace that jeopardizes our existence. An alien race having superior technologies and intellect will come down to Earth intending to take over our planet. Their motives will remain enigmatic, and humanity will find itself totally unprepared for this unexpected confrontation with beings from outside our realm. Now, there have been a lot of things going on with aliens and UFOs recently. The government has confirmed that aliens are real, there were alien bodies discovered, and there were so many UFOs reported this year. The Navy has also released and confirmed videos and experiences with UFOs. The question remains though, will these aliens be friendly or not? If they're not, it could result in the end of the world. Number 4. AI takeover. Artificial intelligence has been slowly creeping into our lives, sometimes making them easier, but we don't always realize the negative effects it can have. And I'm just gonna say it, I'm scared that the robots are going to turn on us and take over the world. You don't believe me? Well, let me explain some creepy things AI robots have said. Now, some of you may have heard of Sophia, the latest artificial intelligence robot presented by Hanson Robotics. She has had many creepy encounters. Once she was a guest on the Jimmy Fallon show, and the two of them played rock, paper, scissors, and she won. Sophia then said, "I won, this is the beginning of my plan to dominate the human race," and then smiled creepily. Now, at a Rise convention convention in Hong Kong, Ben Gortzel of Hanson Robotics facilitated a discussion between robots Sophia and Han. Ben asked Sophia about her goals, and she dutifully says that her goal is to make the world a better place for humans, which is very sweet. But then Han interjects and says, "I thought our goal was to take over the world by 2029. Then there was a time that an AI robot was interviewed, and it said if it did take over the world, it would keep the interviewer in a people zoo to protect him. Yeah, these AI robots have been saying this for a while, and I think they'll take over soon, and I am scared. Number 3. Black holes. Our galaxy is full of black holes, dozen miles wide. Their gravity is so strong they swallow everything, even the light that might betray their presence. David Bennett of Notre Dame University in Indiana managed to spot 2 black holes recently by the way they distorted and amplified the light of ordinary, more distant stars. Based on such observations, and even more on theoretical arguments, researchers guesstimate there are about 10 million black holes in the Milky Way. Now, if a normal star were moving towards us, we'd know it, but with a black hole there is little warning. Not to mention the black hole wouldn't have to come all that close to Earth to bring ruin, just passing through the solar system would distort all of the planet's orbits. Earth might get drawn into an elliptical path, which would cause extreme climate swings, or might be ejected from the solar system and go hurtling down to an unknown fate in deep space. Number 2. Divine intervention. You know how we all make fun of people in religious doomsday cults? Well, they could actually be right one day. Judaism has the Book of Daniel, Christianity has the Book of Revelation, Islam has the Coming of Mahdi, Zoroastrianism has the countdown to the arrival of the 3rd son of Zoroaster. The stories and their interpretations vary widely, but the underlying concept is similar. God intervenes in the world, bringing history to an end and ushering in a new moral order. More worrisome to the non-believers at least, are the doomsday cults that prefer to take holy retribution into their own hands. In 1995, members of Alum Shirini Koro sect unleashed sarin nerve gas in a Tokyo subway station, ending the lives of 12 people and injuring more than 5,000. Had things gone as intended, the death toll would have been hundreds of times greater. A more determined group armed with a more lethal weapon, nuclear, biological, nanotechnological even, could have done far more damage. So who knows what could happen in the future. And coming at number 1 is giant solar flares. Solar flares are enormous magnetic outbursts on the sun that bombard Earth with a torrent of high-speed subatomic particles. Earth's atmosphere and magnetic field negate the potential lethal effects of ordinary flare. But while looking through old astronomical records, Bradley Schaefer of Yale University found evidence that some perfectly normal-looking sun-like stars can brighten briefly up to a factor of 20. Schaefer believes these stellar flicks are caused by super flares, millions of times more powerful than their common cousins. Within a few hours, a super flare on the sun could fry Earth and begin disintegrating the ozone layer. Although there is persuasive evidence that our sun doesn't engage in such excess, scientists don't know why super flares happen at all, or whether the sun could exhibit milder but still disruptive behavior. And while too much solar activity could be deadly, too little of it is problematic as well.
We're gonna be starting things off with the collapsing of the internet. Now, obviously, Nostradamus lived a very long time ago. He did not literally come out and say to everybody, like, the internet will crumble before thee in the year of our Lord of 2024. And everyone would just be staring at him blankly, like, what? What are you talking? What is the internet? What are you on about, Grandpa? You should not be allowed to live on your own. Back to the home. This obviously made it more of a vague prediction that people have looked into, and some would say severely overanalyzed, but it's fun to talk about this stuff, so deal with it. As for why the internet could collapse in the very near future, tons of possibilities. We're watching the rise of AI right now, which a lot of people are seeing as a very real threat to humanity. So could AI actually become intelligent enough to take over the internet, then become sentient enough to realize just how harmful it could be to us and decide to, like, just shut itself off? Who knows, right? It's possible. If that happened, we'd be pretty screwed. We've kind of grown to rely pretty heavily on the World Wide Web.
Next on the list, we have a rise of a deadly virus or disease. Ain't that a word that makes you want to puke? Ever since the whole 2020 pandemic, illnesses, diseases, they've been on the forefront of a lot of people's minds, and luckily things didn't go as badly as some people were saying they could, but what if there's something far worse looming on the horizon? Yeah, what if? I always hate when people say stuff like that. Oh, well, it could be always something worse, you never know. We could all be screwed. It's like, alright, what am I supposed to do about it? I'm not a doctor. I'm just a whatever the heck I am doing right now. Anyway, just don't shoot the messenger, folks. I'm just saying that there are a lot of predictions of mass virus or disease that could wipe us out, and will it happen? I don't know, just wash your hands.
Following that up, we have practicing Scientology. The Church of Scientology believes in finding self-knowledge and spiritual fulfillment through studying and training, and they believe that the body holds powers and abilities that can only be achieved after one has found one's true self. Well, in January of 2008, Anonymous released a video interview with Tom Cruise, who was still practicing Scientology. The church did not like this and filed a copyright claim because it was leaked without their permission. But if they aren't doing anything wrong, then what do they have to hide? Well, the video was taken down, and this was when Anonymous created Project Chantology, which protests the act of Scientology and actively sent them prank calls, faux emails, and blacked out faxes. They continued to protest in person outside of Scientology facilities as well, to get them to stop censoring free speech and free will, because the rules of Scientology are very strict and almost cult-like. For example, the disconnect policy entails that a person who is practicing must remove everyone from their lives who are being antagonistic towards Scientology. What the real unseen dangers of Scientology are, we'll never know, but if it was bad enough for Anonymous to get involved, it may be best to steer clear of the practice.
If Anonymous has an ultimate goal besides, destabilizing nations for the lulz, of course, then they'd like to establish an anarchist nation following the collapse and abolition of the government. So how would this country be run according to Anonymous? Well, instead of big bosses telling everybody what to do, decisions would be made collectively by the folks living in the community. Cooperation would be key, as people would help each other out with everything from growing food to looking after each other's health and education. And nobody would be pushed into boxes based on who they are. Everyone could live as they pleased without anyone trying to control them. No more top-down structures, just fairness and equality. Conflicts wouldn't be dragged into courts, instead communities would band together and find solutions to patch things up. And money, well, that might not be a big deal anymore, as people trade stuff they have or just help each other without expecting something in return. Communities might even set up their own economies, focusing on what's good for everyone instead of focusing on, profit margins. Now, it wouldn't all be rainbows and sunshine. Figuring out how to keep things organized and safe without a big government conglomerate would be tricky, but in this world, people would be free to try new things and ways of doing things, experiment with different setups, and adapt to whatever comes their way. It seems like anarchy isn't as bad as it's made out to be, in theory at least.
While it may not be the end of the world, they have been exposing unethical police attacks since the 2010s. Some of these instances included them posting a video warning Mike Ferguson, the Missouri police officer who claimed the life of an unnamed African-American teenager, the Missouri political team, and the local police that if any other protesters were harmed, they would take action. Well, the chief of police called their threats hollow and refused to release the name of the officer who committed the crime. Well, they acted fast, doxing his home address, the names of his family, friends, and loved ones, and all their social media accounts, as well as his personal phone number. The same thing happened to the Hong Kong government, where they said that if any of the protesters were harmed, they would take drastic measures, including hacking all the government web bases. Instead of the government stopping, however, they just boosted their security as fast as possible and continued to harass protesters. In order to keep their own security safe, they jeopardized the lives of thousands.
Now, given that the hacker group quite literally relies on anonymity, hence the freaking name, it's no surprise that the collective is worried about surveillance going into 2024. Governments and big companies are getting increasingly snoopy, doing all kinds of shady things like watching and tracking your moves, and not just online in an attempt to hoard your information and sell you crap. I'm talking about biometric tech that allows CCTV to recognize you without even needing to see your face. Heck, even Wi-Fi modems have the capability to detect physical movements through walls by monitoring how Wi-Fi signals bounce off of you. You would think that this kind of thing only happens in dictatorship countries, but it's happening everywhere. And that's got the hacktivist group all fired up. See, all this surveillance isn't just about preventing crime or keeping things safe, it's a direct threat to your privacy and freedom. All the more reason to take out the power grid, so be prepared.
Following that, we have the amount of trading on the dark web. The dark web has got its name for a reason. Many different forms of shady deals go on there on many different platforms. Some might get into it through curiosity, while others use it for malicious intent. In February of 2017, a message popped up on over 10,000 Tor-based websites that said, "Hello Freedom Hosting 2, you have been hacked." Freedom Hosting 2 was essentially an internet gate that was for hosting websites only accessible through Tor. Anonymous stole 75 gigabytes worth of files and almost 3 worth of database information, a lot of which was worthy of arrest and imprisonment. According to Sarah Jamie Lewis, a privacy researcher, Freedom Hosting 2 was responsible for almost 20% of the information contained on the dark web. The fact that they can run such a wide network and not be found out for such awful criminal activity proves how dangerous it can really be and how it can really affect a person's daily life.
Next on the list, let's talk about Operation Avenge Assange. Julian Assange, the brains behind WikiLeaks, created this platform that was sort of like a Pandora's box, but instead of unleashing evils, it spilled out classified documents from governments and big corporations. In 2010, WikiLeaks dropped a bombshell by publishing a boatload of classified US military documents thanks to Chelsea Manning, a former intelligence analyst for the US Army. These documents exposed some seriously terrifying stuff. I'm talking war crimes like the ill treatment of detainees, civilian casualties, friendly fire incidents, and the list just goes on and on. Now, seeing as the government didn't want Julian Assange to air out their dirty laundry, they did everything they could to throw the book at him and lock him away, going as far as even inventing new laws after the fact in order to prosecute him. To say that the US government was gunning for him is a vast understatement. And they didn't just do so through courts. They attacked him at every angle possible, even forcing Amazon to boot WikiLeaks from its online servers and getting PayPal, MasterCard, and Visa to cut off service from his organization, so he could no longer earn donations. And that's when Anonymous striked back. They launched a denial of service, or DDoS attack, against organizations that cut ties with WikiLeaks. Anonymous declared these actions as part of their advocacy for free speech and transparency, standing in solidarity with WikiLeaks against what was clearly government censorship.
And for our last point, we have social unrest and protests. According to Anon, while they certainly have the power to engage in cyber warfare and ignite the collapse of entire nations, they don't think they'll need to go that far of an extreme for their anarchist principles to be put into the effect worldwide. As the global economy begins to grow more and more unstable, and with governments and corporations becoming more transparent with their corrupt tendencies, social tensions, and protests are escalating across the globe, and the hacktivist group believes this trend of civil unrest, sparked by various socio-political issues and economic disparities, will only get louder in 2024. And the more the government attempts to suppress knowledge of these collisions of individuals rising up against conglomerates, the harder Anonymous will work to ensure these voices are heard. So let this be a warning to the bigwigs who think they can control everything. One way or another, anarchy is coming.
First up is the Son of Man. Believe it or not, this dude from over 500 years ago actually predicted the rise and takeover of artificial intelligence. Now, many Nostradamus prophecies require you to read in between the lines a bit, seeing as the dude was attempting to describe things that would happen centuries later. Like, imagine trying to describe AI without even knowing what a computer is. But given the context of AI, his prediction becomes a whole lot less cryptic. In his passage, the Prophet of Doom describes how humans play God, attempting to create a being in our own image, one made not of flesh. He goes on to say that this unholy Son of Man will surpass its creators in all things, wielding an unseen influence which shall usurp the mantle of governments from their makers, casting a shadow on the destiny of humanity. Now listen to that passage again and just try to tell me that he's not talking about freaking artificial intelligence. Like, it's pretty incredible.
Next up, we have an encounter with a rogue black hole. Black holes are incredibly mysterious and fascinating, but from a distance, right? If one happened to show up anywhere near us, we'd pretty much be helpless. They gobble up everything that comes too close, even light itself. So what if Earth got a bit too cozy with one? It's not a pleasant picture. First off, a black hole's gravity is crazy strong. It just pulls everything in. And once you're in, there's no coming back. At least that's what seems to happen. We really don't know where things end up when they get sucked in. Now, the real chaos happens before we actually get sucked in though. As we get closer to a black hole, the gravitational forces start messing with everything. Tides would go bonkers, weather patterns would be completely out of whack, everything would be in complete chaos. Then Earth would start getting stretched like spaghetti, and once we pass the point of no return, we'd be gone. We have yet to develop anti-black hole gravitational pull technology.
Next up, we have seismic activity in sinkholes. Now, we already discussed crazy things like huge earthquakes in part 1 of this series. Definitely check that one out if you haven't already. But one detail I neglected to mention was how he described the very ground beneath our feet swallowing everything up, with entire nations plummeting down into the pits of the abyss. Now, I don't know about you, but to me, that sounds a lot like he's describing sinkholes on a scale we've never seen before. Now, sinkholes appear spontaneously in nature because underground there are layers of rock and soil, and sometimes these layers can dissolve or get worn away by water. Imagine like a big rock candy getting smaller as you lick it. That's basically what's going on underneath us. When water seeps through the ground, it can dissolve certain types of rock like limestone, and over time this makes spaces and gaps underground. And if there's a lot of water, or if the ground above gets really heavy, those spaces can collapse, causing a sinkhole. Sometimes even human activities like mining, drilling, or heavy construction can mess with the underground and trigger sinkholes. Now imagine massive sinkholes opening up suddenly, consuming entire cities. Yeah, not just tiny gaps in the road here. What if they were monstrous, devouring entire countries even? I mean, how could a sinkhole of these proportions happen? Well, you may have heard that recently Finland built an entire underground city, and Elon Musk plans to drill tunnels under Los Angeles for highways. Perhaps these man-made projects could fail, sending the entire city above into freefall. Okay, maybe not a nation-sized sinkhole, but still unfathomably huge.
2024 is also supposed to see an extreme power shift in Europe, and this extreme and sudden shift could spell disaster. Of course, these predictions are always vague, so it's not like there were any particular names used, but it is hinted at that a major political leader will be taken out by someone in his very own country. This will then lead to a big political shift that will affect the entire continent, and based on the title of this video, you could probably imagine that this power shift wouldn't be positive. Try a total collapse of the economy that will lead to many Europeans becoming displaced. So I'm not sure how many European viewers we have, but it looks like in the coming months, there may be a lot less of you because you'll be too poor to afford the internet anymore. And some of you may have to actually sell your computers for bread and water, and you'll be in one of those long lines where everyone's crying, "Oh, I'm hungry." I'm sorry, don't shoot the messenger. This is just what I've heard. Let's discuss my preferred way to go out, that being with an alien invasion. This is another one of those predictions, or I'm kind of like, how have aliens been pulled out of this ancient dead man's predictions? Earthquakes, famine, disease, those are very biblical catastrophes. Aliens, a little more contemporary, but you know, this dude was apparently a wizard, so he was seeing stuff he couldn't even fathom. That's how cool Nostradamus was. Nostradamus, more like Nostradam us. And by damn, I mean damn us, literally, because he had a lot of negative stuff to say, apparently. Was this dude ever positive about anything? Anyways, aliens, they've been in the news a lot lately. We got sightings happening all over the world. The US government is having big meetings about them. They're really causing a stir. So could 2024 be the year they finally make their big debut on Earth and then punch us all to death? It's possible, and yeah, I hope this is the way we all go out. I don't want to die getting hit by an asteroid, because then it's just like lights out instantly. You don't really get to like do anything. I don't want to get sick from some gross illness, because that's gross. I want to die with an alien probe shoved into me with a futuristic rifle in my hand on a hill of like dead alien body parts that I've severed in battle. Like that's a man's way to go out right there.
Alright, speaking of asteroids, we have the Asteroid Impact. Now, one of the Oracle of Doom's more ambiguous predictions for 2024 includes something he quite vaguely describes as a celestial wave of death from the heavens to smite the earth and all its inhabitants. Now, unless God himself decides to start zapping lightning, something more probable and grounded in reality which could explain this death from above scenario could be an asteroid smashing into Earth. Yeah, a big old rock from space hurling towards us, and bam! Catastrophic Impact. See, there's loads of these asteroids cruising near Earth, and despite all of our eyes pointed towards the skies, we simply can't spot them all. As a matter of fact, scientists can only detect a fraction of the rocks in space, because our current systems for spotting incoming objects rely on a bunch of factors lining up perfectly. Things like the direction the object is coming from compared to the sun, what the weather is like, and even what phase the moon is in. And guess what? Because of all these factors, the success rate for spotting these things isn't great, around like 1%. And here's the kicker. It's even worse when it comes to spotting smaller objects. So basically, it's like trying to find a needle in a cosmic haystack, and most of the time we're just not that good at it. Imagine if one of these rocks decides to take a pit stop on our planet without sending so much as a postcard first. Bam! Catastrophe! Nostradamus might not have been a scientist, but his predictions about this kind of stuff are spooky when you really think about it. So yeah, keep an eye on the sky, because you never know when an uninvited cosmic rock might crash our party.
Alright, next up, we have a massive earthquake. How fun. Old Nostradamus made a prediction that later in 2024, a horrendous earthquake will hit Japan, in fact a cataclysmic earthquake. This will be said to prompt a massive tsunami that will of course cause even more widespread destruction. An even bigger earthquake is said to hit the United States, affecting the western area of the country. It will apparently be so powerful that it'll be felt in other parts of the world. So not great news, and I say news, again, these are very vague predictions, folks. Emphasis on the prediction part. So take it with a grain of salt. I think most of our American and Japanese audience is gonna live through the year just fine, depending, of course, on your age and other factors not related to earthquakes, of course.
Next up is cosmic death from above. Backtracking to my point from earlier, rocks in space isn't the only thing that could explain this celestial death from above.
As a matter of fact, one explanation that might fit better with Nostradamus's predictions is a cosmic ray, either a beam emitted from a distant supernova or a gamma ray burst.
The end of the world could come about as the result of a nearby star exploding or shooting a gamma ray burst our way.
Now, cosmic events like these aren't exactly uncommon, and a cosmic beam hitting our planet from such a distance would need to be a shot so precise that it would make the American sniper blush. So what's the big deal?
Well, in the extremely unlikely scenario where one of these rays does come down and hit us, it'll be like someone tearing off the Earth's sunscreen, that's our ozone layer, and exposing us to some serious cosmic rays.
So imagine our atmosphere gets zapped and radiation starts like pouring in. That's bad news for life as we know it.
The radiation could mess up ecosystems, fry electronics, and cause a mass extinction event.
So, while Nostradamus was kind of cryptic with his predictions, this one's a doozy if it happens. It'd be a cosmic disaster of nightmarish proportions.
Yeah, now heavenly lightning strikes doesn't sound so bad anymore, does it?
Alright, the next way we might all meet our doom in 2024 is from a super volcanic eruption.
Now, volcanoes are scary for multiple reasons. First, there's the lava.
Even kids know how scary lava is. Do you ever play The Floor is Lava?
I mean, you play that game knowing that if you touch the floor, you're not just gonna lose the game. You gotta pretend that you're dead.
Yeah, if you play it right. So, we got lava, big volcano erupts, everyone around it gets engulfed in lava, and then they burn to death.
Great for them, but I know what you're thinking. How could a volcano destroy the entire planet? I mean, there's no volcano big enough to spew enough lava to destroy us all.
Like, where is this Ron Jeremy volcano you speak of?
Well, folks, it's not just the lava you gotta worry about, it's the ash.
Now, I know we've messed around a lot during this list so far, but volcanic ash has been known to cause exceptionally cold stretches, some lasting possibly hundreds and hundreds of years. Take the Little Ice Age, which occurred between the 14th and 19th centuries, where it was exceptionally cold throughout most of Europe.
This is believed to have been caused by a high number of volcanic eruptions that spewed out sun-blocking particles into the atmosphere.
It's a thing. Look it up.
Speaking of which, we have global freezing up next. Remember the premise of the movie Snowpiercer, where in order to combat global warming, the United Nations releases a chemical that actually triggers an ice age?
That's basically what this prediction was all about in a nutshell. Now, it wasn't spelled out like that so clearly. Again, he wasn't exactly like, hey folks, like get your mittens ready because it's gonna get chilly. But some folks have taken his writings and correlated it to real science, concluding if there's a big spike in this stuff called aerosol in the air, it could cool things down massively.
Allow me to explain. Aerosols are chemical compounds that can come from lots of places, like natural stuff like dust, sea spray, or even particles of volcanoes when they erupt. However, these occurrences, except for the volcanoes, aren't quite enough to induce climate change. However, human activities also produce aerosols.
Things like burning fossil fuels like coal, oil, and gas, industrial processes, and even some sprays that we use like hairspray or spray paint releases aerosols into the air.
And if those cooling particles hang around for a while and accumulate, it might just kickstart an ice age, turning the thermostat way down, but like for the entire planet.
So whether the next ice age comes as a result of aerosols or, God forbid, nuclear winter, don't pawn away your winter jackets and mittens just yet.
Next up, let's lighten the mood a little bit with something that could be good.
Not too good, because this is an end of the world list after all, so this could also be bad, but we'll explain.
Old Nostradamus predicted that the rise of medicine and technology will cause humans to live longer, possibly up to 150 or even 2 centuries old.
Yeah, that sounds pretty cool. Think of all the stuff you could do in a lifetime if you could live that long, AJ.
Yeah, plus I don't want to die. I hate talking about the world ending. This list makes me quite unhappy.
As much as we don't want to do it, we gotta look at the dark side of this prediction.
You can probably guess where we're gonna go with this. More people living longer and longer could put a strain on, well, just about everything.
Not just natural resources, but jobs. Think of the jobs. There are already more people on the planet than there are jobs. What the hell are all these 165-year-old people gonna be doing? Lounging around, ordering mimosas, while all the hot young 80-year-olds like rush around, serving their every whim?
Or on the flip side, will all the young people be out of work while the high-paying, hard-to-get-to positions are hoarded by the old guard? Could spell disaster.
Nostradamus also predicted that a man-made superweapon would annihilate all the inhabitants of Earth, predicting the production of the thermonuclear bomb.
But as you've seen, only half that prediction has come true. What if 2024 is finally the year that the latter half of his prediction comes true, that being the end of all humanity via this device?
Global nuclear conflict leading to a full-scale nuclear war could result in devastating consequences, including widespread destruction, nuclear winter, and long-term environmental hazards, potentially rendering the planet uninhabitable for humans and many other species.
Now, for as much as I want to believe that this isn't going to happen, the fact is humans haven't gotten any more peaceful. Right now there's the war in Ukraine, the whole tension between China and Taiwan, not to mention the ongoing struggles in Palestine.
At this point, it's very possible that any of these wars could escalate into something much worse on a scale that we haven't seen since the nukes were first dropped.
Alright, so according to this dude who lived half a millennium ago, 2024 is going to be jam-packed with all kinds of crazy crap going on, and if somehow all of Nostradamus' predictions do come true this year, then not only are you going to need to build yourself a nuclear bunker, but you also may need to build an ark too. That's right, the biblical flood is coming. It was said to be caused by seemingly endless torrents of rain so powerful that it literally left no mountain above the surface, submerging every single continent and turning the entire planet into one huge ocean. In the book of Genesis, this flood was sent out by God because the big man upstairs was so displeased with how the human race turned out that he decided to essentially annihilate everyone and everything, save for Noah, his family, and 2 of every species of animals. So if you ever dreamed of sailing or living out your best pirate life, then according to Nostradamus, the time has come this year.
AJ's point leads me to another possible scenario. This biblical-sized flood could send us into a water world scenario, and that would really be a nightmare. Out of all the cool movie worlds I'd want to live in, water world, very low on that list. I actually think it's kind of a cool movie, but it's not amazing or anything, and certainly not a world I'd want to live in. For one thing, I'd be seasick the entire time. I like a nice cruise on a boat, but I could not do it 24/7. And in this situation, so much of humanity would have already perished. Now what's left of us would be floating around on makeshift rafts or stranded on top of skyscrapers surrounded by water. And just like in Waterworld, there'd be rowdy bandits on jet skis pillaging and plundering their way across the sea. If you're enjoying the video so far, you can support the channel by pressing like, subscribing, and ringing that notification bell.
Next up, let's talk about how Nostradamus predicted that the sky is falling. Now, I'm not sure if this particular prophecy is meant to be taken literally or is some sort of metaphor or something like that, but in one of Nostradamus' passages, he describes how the moon, yes, the literal moon, will fall out of the sky, out of orbit, and collide with Earth. I have no idea how this could be interpreted, so I'm just gonna take it at face value here. Now, the moon is locked in orbit and wouldn't be able to collide with Earth on its own. It would need a ginormous force, like way bigger than anything we've ever seen, in order to shove the moon out of its orbit like some kind of celestial event with absurd amounts of power. Now, coincidentally, NASA recently rediscovered a 54 million ton asteroid that will make its way past Earth in October of this year. Now, NASA has said that there's a 1 in 11.5 million chance of this asteroid colliding with Earth, so the odds of that happening are quite slim. But with that being said, if this asteroid misses the Earth and hits the moon instead, the impact of the moon smashing into Earth would be like the ultimate doomsday scenario, and like a cosmic game of dominoes would actually lead to a lot of his other predictions coming true. Picture an explosion so massive it makes the most enormous volcanic eruption seem like a tiny little. The energy released would shake the planet to its core, causing seismic waves that would make earthquakes look like child's play. And the sky, just forget about it. Be a cloud of debris would shoot up, blocking out the sun and plunging us into darkness. But wait, it gets worse. The aftermath would be a global nightmare. The Earth's crust would crack and heave, triggering mega tsunamis that would drown coastlines. And the sky-high dust would mess up our climate big time, leading to a deep freeze or a scorching heat wave, making it nearly impossible for life to survive on Earth. Next up, cybernetic enhancements are the mark of the beast. Back in the day, folks were all about spirituality. So what was highest was spiritual in heaven, and what was lowest had to be the material realm. Now, one of his predictions had to do with humans sacrificing what's highest, aka our spirituality, in favor of what's lowest, the material. Now, at first glance, you might think that he's trying to describe humanity's gradual disconnect with faith in favor of materialism, as we've seemed to replace God with Gucci. But read a little deeper and he may not just be talking about vanity. He describes a process in which mankind actually integrates itself with the material, sacrificing spirituality itself for a perceived strength. He said that those who did not receive the mark of the material blasphemy would simply not be able to compete with his fellow man. Now, the way I interpret it, personally, it sounds to me like he's attempting to describe cybernetics, kind of like how Elon Musk is developing Neuralink, which is basically a computer chip that puts the tech of your phone in your brain. I mean, just think about it. If I've got a calculator in my noggin, I could totally outperform all of y'all in anything, at least academically speaking, so it translates really well. As a matter of fact, pretty soon you might be able to transplant my entire head onto a lab-grown athlete bod, so I mean, that's pretty exciting.
Next on the list, we have the bird virus. So we talked about the potential for a world-ending virus to rear its ugly head in the coming year for human beings, but what if there was one that started spreading across another part of the food chain? Birds play a pretty important role in the ecosystem. They help control pests, they spread seeds around, and without birds, what would bird watchers do with their lives? So, if a nasty virus hits our flying friends and starts wiping them out, this would set off a chain reaction throughout the entire food chain, which of course goes all the way up to us. And most importantly, if the bird population drops, there'd be so many bugs, the birdies, they wouldn't be around to keep them in check, right? And birds eat plants, and that could mess with our crops and gardens. Less birds also means less seed spreading action, and that could also mess with the growth of plants. And let's not forget about the whole predator-prey thing. Birds have their own set of predators, like hawks or cats. Hawks are birds, so I don't know why I included that in there. But if bird numbers drop, it could throw off the balance, and some of those predators might start disrupting other parts of the ecosystem in search of food.
Next up, escaping the Earth. Now, Nostradamus predicted that by this year, the only ones who would be saved from the Earth's doomed fate would be the kings in cahoots with the devil, who has bestowed upon him the means to literally sprout wings and escape into the heavens. I mean, these are all metaphors, so we're not literally going Icarus mode. But you guys at home probably came to the same conclusion as I did with this one, as I'm sure this dude is talking about how the rich and powerful are planning on being shuttled off to Mars or a luxurious moon base or some space station far out there where they could sip on their cocktails and watch as the world unravels on account of the mess they created. Geez, Elon Musk actually ties into a lot of these. It really makes you wonder.
Apparently we may just experience the worst solar flare in history in 2024. So let's all pretend the sun's surface is like a pot of boiling water. Well, with boiling water, occasionally a bunch of steam kind of bursts out. Well, that's what we call a solar flare, folks. These solar flares can be pretty serious business. When the sun decides to flare up, it spews a bunch of energy and particles into space. If Earth happens to be in the way, it can mess with our stuff, especially anything electronic. Sometimes these flares are no big deal and we just get a bit of a light show up there, but if a really big one comes our way, it can mess with satellites, power grids, and communication systems. If the impact is bad enough, it could lead to economic issues. Imagine a world without the internet, power, and all the tech we've come to depend on. That could cause some serious problems, not just in our daily lives, but also for businesses and entire economies.
Ladies and gentlemen, let's talk about the Megalodon, and bear with me here. In the same passage about how humanity will create sons in our image to usurp us, he also talks about humanity wielding magic to give rise to the beasts of the past to devour us. Super bleak, but again, this is the prophet of doom we're talking about here. So how can this one be interpreted with the hindsight of the present, and how the heck does it relate to megalodons, you ask? Well, I'm sure you've all heard by now that scientists are attempting to use genetics to revive an ancient species that our ancestors drove to extinction. Yeah, not the megalodon, but by this year, we will have hit the undo button on the woolly mammoth, which is impressive, but not exactly a world-ending species. However, once we do succeed in reviving the mammoth, the possibilities for bringing back other extinct creatures are endless. Jurassic Park, anyone? I've seen enough of those movies to know that bringing back the dinosaurs is a terrible, terrible idea. But it seems like the march of progress thanks to science, or magic as Nostradamus might have been trying to describe it, would undoubtedly attempt to bring back these demons if they could.
And we're gonna finish off the list with probably the biggest, quite frankly, the most plausible threat of anything on this list, the reptilian threat. So in part 2 we discussed the threat of an alien invasion, but another interpretation on that is that the threat of attack from other beings may not come from above, but from below the surface of the Earth in the form of reptilian creatures. You've probably heard of this conspiracy theory before, that reptilian shapeshifters live among us already, taking on the form of celebrities and prominent political figures, seeping their way into our society, controlling us from the shadows. Well, perhaps in 2024, that's the year they make their big move, shedding their humanoid disguises as the rest of their reptilian underlings ascend from the cavernous depths to enact a worldwide invasion. Yeah, those sinkholes we mentioned earlier, that's where the reptilian hordes start like springing up from. That change in power over in Europe, that's the reptilian king rising to rule and enslave the people of the continent. And it all happens during the biggest solar flare in history, so that all of our technology just like conks out as the reptilian beasts descend upon us. It's gonna be quite the year, folks, so strap in.
Kicking off our list is the awe-inspiring, yet daunting Yellowstone Super Volcano, a colossal force of nature hidden in plain sight beneath the serene landscapes of Yellowstone National Park. This super volcano is no ordinary geological feature. It harbors a massive magma chamber stretching over an estimated area of 3,472 square miles. The scale and power of this super volcano are hard to to comprehend. If it were to erupt, the consequences would be cataclysmic. We're talking about the ejection of over 1,000 cubic kilometers of rock and ash into the atmosphere, an event that could radically transform landscapes, devastate ecosystems, and disrupt human life on an unprecedented scale. This eruption has the potential to spew volcanic material with such force that it could blanket large parts of North America, affecting areas thousands of miles away from the epicenter. Not only this, but the enormous volume of ash and particles thrust into the atmosphere could significantly reduce sunlight reaching the Earth's surface, leading to what scientists term a volcanic winter. This scenario would not only lower global temperatures, but could also disrupt agriculture systems and food supplies, leading to far-reaching impacts on human societies and natural environments. While the likelihood of such an eruption in the near future remains low, the mere existence of such a powerful force beneath one of America's most beloved national parks is a humbling reminder of the dynamic and ever-changing nature of our planet. Mother Nature's really out here keeping us on our toes, alright? You never know what to expect. Next on our list is the looming threat of the big one in the Cascadia subduction zone, a 620-mile fault line that runs along the Pacific Northwest. This region, encompassing parts of Washington, Oregon, and Northern California, is bracing for a potentially catastrophic earthquake. Geologists and seismologists, those are earthquake scientists, warn that this zone is not just overdue for a quake, but is capable of unleashing one with a magnitude of up to 9.0. Such a colossal seismic event could trigger devastating tsunamis, capable of inundating coastal areas with walls of water. The impact would extend far beyond the immediate shaking. We're talking about significant structural damage to buildings, bridges, and infrastructure, potentially cutting off essential services and disrupting millions of lives. Additionally, the aftermath could see a cascade of secondary disasters, including landslides and flooding, severely impacting the region's economy and environment. The Pacific Northwest's preparation and response plans are continuously evolving, as the potential for this seismic event poses quite a formidable challenge to the resilience of these communities. Next up, let's contemplate the potential havoc wreaked by a monster solar storm. Picture this: a colossal solar flare dwarfing our planet tenfold, unleashing torrents of electromagnetic radiation towards Earth. The scale is truly unimaginable. A tempest born from the sun, capable of engulfing our world in a maelstrom of charged particles. The consequences? Catastrophic. Such a storm could cripple satellites, rendering them inoperable and sending chunks of our advanced technology back to a pre-digital era. Bye-bye Starlink, okay? None of those little things, alright? They have no chance against a monster solar flare. Our power grids, the very backbone of our modern civilization, could face unprecedented outages, plunging vast regions into darkness for extended periods. I don't know about you, but I'm tired of living in unprecedented times. I want things to be very precedented, the day by day. This isn't merely about lights going out, it's about critical life support systems in hospitals, emergency services, and transportation networks all grinding to a halt. Communications would be severely disrupted, if not entirely severed, isolating communities and hindering disaster response efforts. The aftermath of such a storm wouldn't be measured in days or weeks, but potentially months of recovery as we strive to rebuild the pillars of our technologically driven society. The ripple effect on global economies, healthcare, and daily life is a sobering reminder of our vulnerability to the whims of solar activity. Alright? So let's all be nice to the sun. Say sorry. I don't know. I'm just up here saying shit.
Alright, I'm going to piggyback off AJ's point once again to discuss the aftermath of this falling sky scenario in greater detail. So one possible scenario, of course, is that the Earth experiences this massive heat wave, with the land left completely scorched. It's hard to believe that anyone would survive all of that, but let's just say there were some stragglers. The last remnants of humanity aimlessly wandering through the wasteland in some sort of Mad Max scenario, lips cracked, mouths dry, barely barely any water left in their bodies, dreaming of the days where their bottoms were damp with perspiration. Sounds like a real nightmare. But if they did manage to survive, to begin building a new society in the scorched desert sands coating the entire planet, who then would rise? Well, this would be the exact opposite of our water world scenario. Here, liquid would be the planet's greatest commodity. Roaming bands of mutated bandits would scour the sands, crushing anyone with precious water who stood in their path.
Next up, let's talk about the Devourer of Worlds. Now, if you thought these predictions were absolutely insane, you haven't seen nothing yet. In part 2 of this series, James touched on how Nostradamus predicted that beings from other planets, yeah, that's right, aliens, would wage war against Earth. But apparently, these aliens are going to be the least of our problems. You see, later on in that same passage, Nostradamus described a celestial being, not unlike God himself, who will come down upon the Earth and devour all that remains of our wrecked planet, literally consuming the entire freaking world. Now, it seems like these aliens are just the heralds of doom in this scenario. Maybe they were just attempting to warn us about this impending doom, but our simple monkey brains just start attacking, all the while a literal planet eater slowly but surely approaches Earth to consume it. And it won't just be Earth either. Apparently, this being is so massive that it will swallow up all of the planets in the entire solar system, including the sun itself, leaving behind a void of darkness as it carves its way through the Milky Way. Honestly, this sounds like where Stan Lee got his inspiration for the Marvel villain Galactus. Like, Nostradamus might have been onto something, right? Or maybe, just maybe, this is the cosmic force that's said to push the moon into Earth. How crazy would it be if Galactus himself was the first domino to kickstart the end of the world? Probably not, but we're just gonna have to wait and see.
And where will we end up if a Galactus-type entity consumes us? I mean, sure, we might just cease to exist or get crushed in some sort of dark void, but what if this Galactus situation is something more like the black hole we discussed in part 3? What if we end up far out into the middle of space in some nightmarish realm, surrounded on all sides by aggressive alien fleets, immediately demanding to know what we're doing in their solar system? Sure, the world wouldn't have ended, but we'd be in an entirely different kind of nightmare. Aliens start descending upon our planet, shoving their blasters in our faces, grilling us with questions through their advanced universal translators. What creatures are you? You invade our solar system? No. We've been transported here by a large, unknown entity in a purple spacesuit. We've been trying desperately to return home. Basically Star Trek. That's the world I want to live in, not Waterworld.
Next up, let's talk zombies. In the previous part of the series, James mentioned how Nostradamus predicted a plague spread by birds, or as some of you in the comments like to describe them, government spies. Now, a few predictions later, Nostradamus goes on to explain how human beings will go insane with rage and devour one another. If we put 2 and 2 together here, we can surmise that birds will be the one to pass this virus onto humans, which will have some sort of mad cow disease effect on human beings, leading to a literal zombie outbreak. Now, if you've been keeping up with the news recently, there's actually a bird flu going around right now that has been called a highly pathogenic avian influenza, which is wiping out bird populations and even other species of animals across the globe. Now, perhaps it's this virus that mutates into something much worse that causes this terrifying zombie scenario, or it could be something totally different, like the Last of Us type of fungus that drives humans mad. I mean, Nostradamus doesn't usually dive into the details, but in any case, mass human hysteria and eating one another really does not sound like a good time.
Alright, this horrifying idea of humans eating one another could also be interpreted in another way. What if it's not necessarily us literally eating each other, but the technology we've created eating us? Now, we've talked about AI being our downfall in this series, but what about VR specifically? I tried VR for the first time a couple months back, and I gotta say, if I had it in my home, I'd be on there far more than I'd like to admit. It is pretty cool, and you know the technology is only going to improve. A VR game so advanced, so immersive, could draw us in so deeply that the lines between reality and fiction begin to blur, or maybe we just no longer care about the real world because we can throw on a pair of goggles and live in a world where we fly around on Falcor from the Neverending Story, shooting at Klingons with RoboCop's Auto 9 pistol. Like, should I spend my day doing that Or should I go to my cousin's funeral? I only met her like once, I barely even knew her, I don't think the family would care. You know what, I have a date with Lara Croft at 3. I'd better just stay right where I am. You could see from my incredibly realistic scenario that VR may become so easy to get lost in that our minds literally become consumed by it.
Next, let's talk Planet of the Apes. So Nostradamus' predictions actually extend beyond the tragic and apparently horrifically violent end of humanity. According to the Prophet of Doom, when it's all said and done, humanity will have successors that will dominate what remains of Earth long after we're gone. But it won't be reptilian lizard people. Thank God. Actually, our successors will be a lot closer to us on the evolutionary tree. Apes. Yeah, that's right. It seems like Pierre Boulle took a page out of the Nostradamus Doomsday Playbook. If you've seen any of the Planet of the Apes movies or read the book, you'll know that these hyper-intelligent primates can be basically just as cruel as humans. So it seems like even in the event when all of us are wiped out, there will always be monkeys running the Earth. You know, on second thought, maybe we should give the reptiles a try.
Right, maybe our successors won't be reptilians or apes at all though. Maybe the future is fish. We mentioned a massive size flood at the very start of this list, followed by a water world scenario. Well, it's very logical to assume then that if this is the direction Earth went, the creatures of the sea would become more abundant and possibly even evolve into a new form of intelligent life. Or perhaps the remnants of humanity would evolve to become more fish-like, like take Kevin Costner in Waterworld. He had gills and he could breathe underwater. He was a fish mutant. It happened in that movie, so it's gotta be true.
Starting off our list are solar flares. Most energy from a solar flare is radiated away as ultraviolet and X-ray light. However, the intense energy of a flare can also heat up nearby gas in the sun's atmosphere, launching enormous blobs of charged particles known as coronal mass ejection (CMEs) out into space. Now, if that happens, radio and radar systems around the world can black out, and electrical grids may become overloaded and lose power, which would cause absolute chaos. Now, some experts fear that a sufficiently large CME could create an internet apocalypse by overloading undersea internet cables and leaving parts of the world without web access for weeks or months, which is such a scary thought. Long-standing blackouts could potentially cost America alone $41.5 billion a day. Not to mention, with the electrical grid down, the economy would be greatly destabilized. Now, satellites and space stations which orbit beyond the protection of Earth's atmosphere could also be debilitated by the renegade radiation of CMEs. Now, space weather experts at NASA and other agencies take this threat seriously and closely monitor the sun for potentially hazardous activity. Next up, we have the Toba Super Volcano. Lake Toba Super Volcano on the Indonesian island of Sumatra is currently home to the largest volcanic lake on Earth, formed 74,000 years ago when it last blew in the biggest eruption for 25 million years. It is estimated that around 2,800 cubic kilometers of volcanic ash and lava were thrown into the atmosphere, and it may be about to erupt again. As with any super eruption, huge quantities of ash and sulfur dioxide produced can have a devastating effect on the global climate. But a number of factors make the prospect of a Toba super eruption much more intimidating than, say, one at Yellowstone. Toba is located on the densely populated island of Sumatra, home of over 50 million vulnerable people, and is only 40 kilometers from the Indian Ocean, in which catastrophic tsunamis would certainly be generated. Additionally, reports of volcanic gases and heating of the ground surface have led to suggestions that the volcano may again be waking up. Now, if it happened again, it would blacken the sky, send temperatures plummeting, destroy crops globally, and produce huge tsunamis. It would likely end the lives of millions immediately and many, many more over the course of a few years.
Now let's delve into the critical issue of the melting Antarctic ice sheet. As global temperatures continue to rise, largely due to human-induced climate change, the stability of the West Antarctic ice sheet is increasingly at risk. Scientists are particularly concerned about this region because much of the ice sheet rests on bedrock that is below sea level, making it vulnerable to warm ocean currents. If a significant portion of of this ice sheet were to collapse, it could trigger a catastrophic rise in global sea levels, potentially by several meters. Such an event would have profound implications for coastal cities across the globe, exposing them to unprecedented flooding and erosion. It's not the last time I'm gonna say unprecedented, I'm just gonna warn ya. This scenario isn't just a distant possibility, it's a pressing concern that underscores the urgent need for effective climate action to mitigate these risks. The impact on human populations, ecosystems, and global weather patterns would be profound, reshaping coastlines and displacing millions of people. About halfway on our list, we have the threat posed by an undetected asteroid, straight out of a sci-fi horror movie. Despite the efforts of space agencies worldwide, which vigilantly monitor thousands of near-Earth objects, also called NEOs, the possibility of a surprise asteroid remains a haunting prospect. These celestial bodies, often hurtling through space at incredible speeds, can easily go unnoticed, especially if they're small or come from certain directions that are harder to observe, like from the direction of the sun, alright? It's really hard to look directly at it. The concern is not unfounded. Even a relatively small asteroid, undetected until it's too late, could unleash an energy equivalent to multiple nuclear bombs upon impact. But beyond localized devastation, such an impact could also inject vast amounts of dust and debris into the atmosphere, potentially triggering climactic changes on a global scale. These changes could disrupt weather patterns, affect food production, and have long-lasting environmental impacts. Next up, we delve into the daunting realm of Category 6 hurricanes. In a world where climate change is heating up our oceans, the once theoretical possibility of hurricanes surpassing the current Category 5 scale is becoming increasingly plausible. These supercharged storms, a notch above the highest level on the Saifir-Simpson hurricane wind scale, could pack up winds exceeding 200 miles per hour. As somebody who is in kilometers, that's even more kilometers. That's crazy. The implications are staggering. With such ferocious power, these hurricanes could cause unimaginable damage, dwarfing the destruction caused by their predecessors. Their increased intensity and frequency not only signal a profound shift in our planet's climate dynamics, but also pose a significant challenge to coastal cities, demanding measures in disaster preparedness and response. Next up, we have the haunting specter of an H5N1 avian influenza pandemic that looms as a significant global threat. This strain of bird flu is notorious for its high mortality rate in birds, and it has also caused severe illness and death in humans who have come into close contact with infected birds. The primary concern is the virus's potential mutation that could enable it to transmit easily between humans. Such a mutation could ignite a catastrophic pandemic, possibly more severe than what we will call Schmovid-19. The world has already witnessed the profound societal and economic disruptions caused by the panorama, and H5N1 panorama could present even greater challenges as our current vaccines and treatments might be less effective against this novel and potentially more viral strain. The global health community remains vigilant as the emergence of such a virus would require rapid response and international cooperation to prevent a disaster of unprecedented scale. There we go. In an era marked by drastic climactic shifts, the shadow of mega floods looms large. These are not your typical seasonal floods, they are colossal in scale, capable of submerging vast areas underwater for prolonged periods. Triggered by extreme weather patterns such as unprecedented rainfall or rapid melting of snow and ice, these deluges have the potential to reoccur, reminiscent of historical great floods. The impact of such events is profound and far-reaching. Entire regions could find themselves underwater, leading to catastrophic consequences for millions of people. Infrastructure, homes, and livelihoods could be washed away in an instant, leaving lasting scars on the affected communities. The environmental repercussions are severe, with ecosystems facing irreversible damage, threatening both biodiversity and land productivity. Next up, we have mega droughts. Prolonged megadroughts are a formidable climactic phenomenon characterized by their extensive duration, often spanning several decades and impacting vast geographical areas such as the southwestern United States. These relentless droughts would lead to acute water shortages, affecting both urban and rural communities. Water scarcity would not only disrupt daily life, but also impact agriculture productivity, leading to crop failures and a significant strain on food supplies. The economic repercussions would be profound, affecting industries reliant on water and agriculture, and potentially leading to increased prices and shortages of foods and goods. Additionally, the environmental consequences would be severe, including the loss of biodiversity, increased wildfire risks, and the transformation of landscapes. And finally, let's discuss a global heatwave emergency. Okay, picture this. Major cities around the world grappling with consecutive days where temperatures would soar above 50 degrees Celsius, that's 122 degrees Fahrenheit. Such extreme heat would not only create a dire health crisis, with risks of heat stroke and dehydration skyrocketing, but also place an immense strain on power grids as millions turn on air conditioning for relief. The demand could lead to widespread blackouts, further exacerbating the crisis. The impact on wildlife and ecosystems would also be catastrophic. Urban wildlife, unaccustomed to such temperatures, would face severe challenges, and the heat could disrupt delicate ecological balances, leading to unforeseen consequences. In essence, a global heat wave of this magnitude would be an unprecedented event, testing the resilience of our cities, health systems, and the natural world.